Tonight, we're gearing up for what should be a defining moment in this presidential race. It's the one and only debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. It's time for some transparency, for facing the music, something that she hasn't had to do so far. Donald Trump, love him or hate him, he's been out there talking to the press, answering the hard questions, not shying away from the spotlight. He's agreed to multiple debates, pushing for more direct confrontations with Harris. On the other side, we've got Kamala Harris, who's been playing it safe, too safe. She's been dodging the media like it's a dodgeball game in high school. And why the hesitation? If you're going to lead the free world, you can't simply choose when to be visible. Harris wants to debate on her terms or not at all, avoiding tough questions, avoiding any real scrutiny. But this isn't just about the debate tonight. It's about who's willing to stand in the sunlight, who's willing to answer for their policies, for their past, and for their plans for America's future. Trump's been out there raw and unfiltered. Harris, she's been calculating every single move. But tonight, Kamala's calculation meets Trump's confrontation. So let's see if she steps up or steps back. I have a special guest joining me tonight, Chris Lowry from the Brushfire Mind. We'll be live streaming the debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris after the countdown, so stick around. It's going to get spicy.
Today is the beginning of the end and the start of a new beginning. Time has come to redefine yourself and let go of the demons in your head that have held you in captivity for so long. It's time to flip the page and prove them wrong. It's time for rebirth. Time's up to say goodbye to all the haters, doubters, and non-believers trying to bring you down. In the blink of an eye, you'll realize that there's so much more to the book than the page you were stuck on. Finally, you will be free to live a life you love living instead of the life you think other people
up, guys? Alex McDonald in Atlanta with a special guest tonight. Danielle was unable to be here, so I'm joined by Mr. Christopher Lowry from the Brushfire Mind. What's up, Chris?
Hey, yo.
How you doing,
You
brother?
caught me typing. I was just telling my audience that they got to check you out every Monday and Thursday at 9 p.m.
And you can check out the Brushfire Mind every weekday morning at around 7:30 a.m.
Within 1 or 2 minutes, generally, but you know,
It is.
live is hard mode, and I'm retired.
Yes, exactly. Chris, and currently his rotating cast of characters, Mario Legion, who some of you'll know because he comes over here. Well, some of you know Cameron as well. He comes over here and hangs out on the show, as does Chris. They do their.
I think you misspelled trolls.
Yes, yeah, they do their weekday morning conservative talk show, The Brushfire Mind. They're still on YouTube. We're not. They are. They're on YouTube. They're on Rumble. They're on Facebook. They're on. You're on. If there's a platform that exists, people can find you on it, right?
Even if they don't speak English.
Even if they don't speak English. But it is good to be back. Thank you for tuning in. If you are watching live, do us a favor, jump into the live chat, say hi, leave some comments. Few people are already tuning in. We've got Cindy. I don't know if Cindy is still here, but Cindy is watching from one of your channels, Chris. Michelle Brown is here.
That.
What's up, Michelle? Danny's here. What's up, Danny? Mark is here. What's up, Mark? Good to see you. I don't know if you all caught my monologue at the beginning, but if you didn't, at the end of the show, go back and replay it. And hopefully Rumble picked it up. Rumble's having an issue lately. So obviously we're covering the debate tonight. We will be. We've got the. I've got the thing up and running.
Ukraine's defense against Russia's invasion.
Let
Martha.
me know.
Okay.
Let me know in the chat that you can hear the verbal diarrhea from ABC right
John,
there.
as you know, and that will be a key issue tonight. Former
Now you're not going to have to watch it on this tiny little screen here. I've got other scenes set up, so you'll be able to see and hear the debate. Hopefully, well. Again, let me know that you can hear ABC in the chat there. Couldn't you? Thank you, Danny. And we'll be cutting back to this scene, and this will be here so that we can. That's difficult to do. That's difficult to do, to actually point to something while you're on
It is
while you're on the
I can't
telly.
tell you how many times I've meant to point to one of those things on the wall.
Yeah,
and pointed over the wrong shoulder because of.
And I love
I'm
it.
looking at the monitor.
I love it when YouTubers are like, "Oh, and you can find that in this video right here," and they're pointing to the complete wrong side of the screen. Yeah, it's challenging, man. It's difficult to do. But yeah, we're all set up. We're ready to go. We will know when we'll be watching this when the commercials are on, so we'll know when to switch back and let you guys hear. Well, as much as you get to hear tonight, which I don't know how much that's going to be because I'm sure Kamala Harris is going to annoy the pants off of both of us. Frankly, I'm speaking. She's not going to get away. She won't get away with that tonight, thankfully, because the microphones will be muted while she's talking. But I want to talk about a couple of things.
She's going to do, Alex? She's going to be asked a question, and then she's going to look directly into the camera, and she's going to say,
Well,
I hear it because they muted his microphone, but Trump is totally trying to interrupt me right now.
Yes, yeah, he's even though he's muted, he's trying to interrupt me. Yeah, she probably will.
And he's going to be standing there like, what?
She's shooting for one of those Brett Kavanaugh moments, right? That 15 minutes of fame she got when she was in the Senate. I want to talk about something though before we get to that. Let me jump to here. Obviously, they finally published some policies to her website, Chris. And I'm sure you can see this. This is KamalaHarris.com, and they listed some policies here. Also listed a link
Have
to.
you looked at the HTML code?
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a second.
Okay.
So they also included a link, by the way, to Donald Trump's Project 2025 agenda, which isn't Trump's. Trump's never been a part of it. He's completely disavowed it, even in the public, and yet Harris and her team are still propagating this lie. Chris.
Yeah, there's got to be a point at which the extent to which they're doing that is, I mean, it's slander.
Yeah,
it's slander and libelous. I think Trump's honestly got a slam dunk lawsuit there over that ridiculous claim.
So do I, because, I mean, the more she says it, of course, the more her lackeys in the legacy media parrot it along with her, to the point where people finally end up believing it. But it's absolute horseshit, as are every single policy in this webpage. And the reason they are, in fact,
there's some rock solid. She's got some rock solid policies.
Well,
like border wall.
Yeah, like a border wall. That's true. But for the most part, they are absolute garbage policies. And there's a reason they're garbage policies, and it's because this campaign isn't a serious campaign. They copied these policies directly from Joe Biden's website. They couldn't even come up with their own damn policies. Shortly after Harris released her policy agenda on Sunday evening, users on X spotted something in the metadata. Much of the language appears to have been lifted from Joe Biden's campaign website. On Sunday night, ex-user Corinne Green pointed out that the issues section of Harris's website contained metadata with language urging voters to re-elect Joe Biden. This language was visible when the links to the campaign site were shared and in the website's description on Google searches. And these are screenshots that Corinne produced and showed that even in the metadata, it's pointing to Joe Biden's website. Sometime late on Sunday night or early Monday morning, the website's metadata appears to have been changed, with the language asking for Biden to be reelected having been removed. And this is where she posted the update. Here's the thing. Very few people are going to learn of this, Chris. Of course, the mainstream media, the legacy media, they're not going to talk about this. They're not going to let people know that this happened. And so I say the administration, she is part of the current administration, but Kamala and her team are going to get away with this. But what it tells me and what it should tell everybody is that this simply isn't a serious campaign. These people don't know what they're doing, that they have to plagiarize the other guy, the guy that they ousted, the guy that they cooed out of there. They're now having to plagiarize him to come up with policies because she can't say what her actual policies are, because literally no one would vote for her if she was honest and upfront. Even Bernie Sanders had to admit this in an interview the other day with, I can't remember who it was. We played the clip last night. But even Bernie Sanders had to admit that she's flip-flopping. She hasn't changed her values. Her progressive socialist values haven't changed one bit. She's simply moving to the center and lying to everybody in order to get elected. That's not me saying that. That's Bernie Sanders saying that.
Well, and you look at Kamala, who she is the current Democrat candidate. She ran in a primary against Joe Biden and quit before she got a single vote. Mm-hmm. And then she, without any primary, she ran and she didn't run in the primary. She let Joe become the selected nominee and then kicked her out.
Right.
Just stabbed her directly in the back. But you look at her, she's deeply unlikable, deeply unpopular. Everybody hates that naggy, whiny voice that I'm speaking. Nobody likes that crap.
No.
She is a psychotic leftist. And then you look at Tim Walz. You've got a guy that was essentially completely unvetted. They were not ready for all the problems he had. And he's just made the situation even worse. But even before the just train wreck that is Tim Walz, it really was as simple as this. There were only two possibilities. Either they know that they're going to steal the election, and so it doesn't matter.
Right.
But it's got to be somewhat plausible. And the problem with removing Biden, see this, Biden screwed him up when he got whooped by Trump, because the problem with removing Biden at this juncture is a whole bunch of people had already donated a pile of money to Biden. Harris is currently engaged in some serious felonious activity. She is using Biden's FEC number in order to access Biden's campaign funds. And I think that's probably the primary reason that she's been kept on the ticket, is otherwise all that money is locked up until it can be returned to its original donors,
and then
they can
redonated, which takes way too long.
Right. So they can't get that done in time. But from the get-go, once they were stuck with Kamala, they picked up Walz, because Walz is a shit candidate. He's never going to be anything else. His political career is dead in the water where it is, because he's such an easy target for a legitimate pundit.
Right.
And so it's either the case that they know they're going to lose, so it's the bottom of the ninth. You don't send out your star pitcher. You don't risk blowing out that arm. You send out the backup guy, and you just kind of give it up. The game is over, so you don't want to risk getting your good characters hurt and taken out of the game. Mm-hmm. So you sacrifice the trash, Kamala and Walz. You just let them go. Or so basically that's the outcome. Whether it's either they know they can't win, so we'll sacrifice these two to lose, or they know they're going to steal it, and she's just the next dog king.
Yeah, I said
they put her there to rub our faces in it. Hey,
right,
we're stealing this from you because we hate you, and we want to remind you every day what we think of you.
Yeah, I've said that virtually same thing on one of our shows. They're not gonna bring up a good pinch hitter when they have a sacrificial lamb, ready to go, who's been anointed already. I mean, we can't forget that the only reason she has this job, she didn't win a single delegate when she was in the primaries in 2020, didn't win a single delegate. She became VP because Barack Obama wanted her to be vice president. It was Barack Obama that pushed Joe Biden into picking her. I'm not sure what dirt she has on Barack Obama that she wields that much influence over him, but that's the reason she has the job. She was remarkably unpopular then. She is as unpopular today, and that's being proven in the polling numbers. We didn't see a post-debate bump for Kamala Harris. We didn't see her up 9 points in Wisconsin the way we did Joe Biden. We saw her up by 1, maybe 2 points, well within the margins, and now we see her back down. According to most recent polls, she's down a point in a number of these swing states. She was wholly unpopular then. She is wholly unpopular now. I do believe the smart money is on Donald Trump, but I also know it's going to be an extremely close election, Chris, even ignoring any attempts to steal it, any potential fraud, because there are a number of states that are still, they still have the rules in place that they adopted in 2020 because of COVID. There are a number of states that still have that mass mail-out absentee ballots. There are a number of states that where ballot harvesting is legal. We're going to see a lot of the shenanigans that we saw in 2020 in those states. But barring any of that, barring any attempt to steal the election, it's going to be remarkably close, and every single Republican vote counts. And I've been telling our viewers, our listeners, that you got to get to the polls. You got to take your friends. You got to take your neighbors. You got to take your kids if your kids are old enough to vote and they don't historically or traditionally vote. You got to take them, or at the very least fill out their. Get them to fill out their mail-in ballot, and or fill it out for them and mail it in for them. It's your kids. I don't know what the law is regarding that, but trust me, Democrats are doing it.
Oh, guaranteed.
Trust me, Democrats are doing it. Every single
we don't even have to
Republican
speculate on that.
here.
We had Sonny Austin say straight up that she did it for her son.
Yes. Yeah.
She filled out his ballot and said it. She said it on air. She's not in jail.
Yep. So
it's not illegal. It is permitted.
This is a remarkably critical election. I don't know that Harris or Trump will be changing any minds tonight. I think the majority. However, you know what? Having said that, a lot of people don't know what Kamala Harris is all about because, as I said in the monologue, she's been dodging the media. She's been avoiding transparency. She's been avoiding policy questions at all costs. And they're not hiding it. They're not shy about it. They will tell you that, there's no reason to make this a policy election. This election's about vibes. It's Brat Summer. Yeah, right? I don't even know what that means, but apparently it's Brat Summer. And
the only way, and I think this is what's going to happen, but the only way this debate actually moves the needle, and again, this is what's going to happen, is she's going to be so obnoxious. She's gonna get herself just obliterated so miserably that tomorrow morning, when you see the spin doctors try and dress it up the way that they tried to with Biden in the earliest hours after he was destroyed in the debate with Donald Trump, the one that got him to quit, the one that made him quit a presidential campaign in the 0 hour, right? Unprecedented. Basically, this is Kamala's to lose. She cannot win it, but she can absolutely lose it hard.
Right.
And I don't think there's anything Trump can do that's going to sway any of his voters away from him. Mm-hmm. I also don't think there's much he can do to get any uncommitted voters to come toward him at this point. It's not about making the argument. It's not about swaying people. It's all about basically turnout. And I hate to admit it, but I hate it. But that means ballot harvesting.
Yeah.
Where Kamala can lose this is she can make it clear that she's so unlikable that your friends aren't going to vote for her, so you don't need to bother.
Right. Let's before we get Chubby's on ABC at the moment, bitching and whining about Trump. I'm sure. Say hi to a few more people. Which of the Lowry clan is W.T. Lowry?
That's Tim Lowry,
That's Tim,
cousin, my clanman.
What's going on, Tim? Thank you for tuning in. Jim's here. What's up, Daddy Jim? Good to see you.
Your Majesty.
His Majesty. Dan is here. What's up, Danny? Good to see you, brother. Thank you for tuning in. Katie's here. Hey, Katie. Thank you for being here. Crackshot 322 is here. Thank you, Crackshot, for tuning in. Big Steve is here. What's up, Steve? Good to see you, brother. He's over on our Rumble channel now. Roddy CCW. What's up, brother?
The Banhammer's pulling double duty, and there's my mother watching as well.
Yeah, there's Terry just tuned in.
We just had a Taco Tuesday with Mom and Dad right before I came back to get in the studio.
Yeah, Crackshot's here. I think I may have said that already, but I'm saying it again. Thank you for tuning in. Alex Bleepin Jones. What's up, Alex? Thank you for another Alex. Thank you for supporting the Alexes of this world.
Yeah, good to see you back, brother. I haven't seen you watching in a while. I know you pull late hours.
Oh, he does? Or they do? I'm assuming Alex Jones is a dude, so he does.
He's a dude.
Okay, good. There's Terry. Hey, Terry. David's here. What's up, David? Trump isn't going to make that easy, Steve. At least I hope so. What did Steve say? He's responding to Steve saying something. I don't know. I'm lost in the chat already. Joey Big Nips. What's up? That's my friend. I'm not gonna.
Rhodey said her best hope is to get a gotcha soundbite from Trump. Yeah, she was banking on that. I'm speaking thing thing again, and
That's what she's going for. Again, another
but
one of those Kavanaugh
she's not going to get
moments.
it because they muted the mics.
They muted the mics, yeah. And this is what we've been discussing on our show. Trump, these rules were great, I think, with Joe Biden because it forced Biden to have to stand there and expose himself for the blithering magoo, the absolute magoo that he is. And it did its job. It exposed Joe Biden. Well, we all knew. Anybody with half a brain cell, we knew that Joe Biden was suffering from dementia. Not early onset dementia, full-blown dementia.
That still just makes me chuckle that they just kept saying it. He may be suffering from early onset dementia.
Yeah, no, it was the full-blown variety of dementia. He still has it. He's still commander in chief. I mean, he's carrying the nuclear button to a beach every day now, but still the commander. Although it's the fake button, it's the big red easy button. They just bought him. They just bought him one of those. They bought him the big red easy button and said, "Here's the button, Joe," and he just sits there banging it all day long, not knowing what the hell he's doing. But he's still commander in chief.
I've got a little silver briefcase right here. I need to make that prop.
Yes, yeah, the big red easy button prop. The guy's just absolutely lost his mind. He's still the commander in chief. I don't know where I was going with this. I lost my train of thought completely. But it makes you wonder.
Dementia is not early onset.
Yeah.
Hey, Rod Purvis joins us and says, "Foxtrot Juliet Bravo."
What's up, Rod? We actually, I had him, Jared Schmack. You came on to that interview with me. We had Jared. Yes. We had Jared on this show on TPS Report. Jared Schmeck came on. We interviewed him, and then he sat in for the rest of the show and talked policy and stories with us. Jared Schmeck was the "fuck Joe Biden" guy. That's the guy that was on the phone with Biden that day. FJB, he said. But yeah, I don't know that. Here's where I was going. I think these debate rules worked out for Trump with Joe Biden because it forced him to have to stand on his own 2 feet. I'm not sure about this time because this is what I think. He's going to have to be his own moderator tonight, Donald Trump. Because I don't believe for 1 second that these ABC moderators are going to be throwing hardballs at Kamala Harris, which means Donald Trump is going to have to step up and do it for himself. I think Trump's best play tonight is to ignore the questions he's asked and simply use his time to ask questions of Kamala Harris. Yes. The questions the ABC won't ask, and force her into the position of either having to dodge those questions, not answer them, or expose herself for the socialist that she is. Because again, a little tidbit of information we can't forget here. She was considered the most, they say liberal, I say communist member of the Senate while she served in the Senate. That was her reputation. That was her voting record, was of the most socialist member of the United States Senate.
Right.
ABC won't point that out. It's going to be on Trump to handle that, Chris.
I think though he's well suited to do it and well prepared to do it.
Oh yeah.
For one, he's had all the time in the world to do this preparation. They've very publicly been using Tulsi Gabbard to stand in for Kamala, and good God, I'd love to be a fly in that room. Okay, so Tulsi's a lefty. She's come around pretty well on the 2A. She's, I'm always suspicious of people who used to be Dems and say they've switched, but Tulsi's a soldier. Again, she seems to have come around on 2A, but she's a soldier. There's that certain dark sense of humor. She's been downrange. Now, she's an officer, right? And most of y'all know we don't need those. They're not useful, but it is what it is. They do wear the uniform. Can you imagine being in that room when they're doing the debate prep and the Donald is just reciting a set of scripted lines that he's trying to pretend like he's going to use, knowing full well he's going to say, fuck this teleprompter, go completely off script, roll with it. And Tulsi interrupts him and says, I'm speaking. I bet you he pisses himself. Just laughing.
Yeah.
Can you imagine seeing her just ambush him with that gag?
Yeah.
I'd pay money to watch that show.
All right, so my stream countdown is saying we're 15 seconds away from the debate beginning. So let me jump over to here and make a couple of quick adjustments. Oh, it was already there. My bad. Let me turn up the volume. Make sure you all can hear it still.
I like
tonight the high stakes show
got there.
Do what, bud?
I like that upper third banner you've got there with your address on it, with a spinning globe at the top edge.
Yes, yeah, it's transparent, so it's seeing the background video there.
Just weeks ago, President Biden withdrawing after his last debate. Donald Trump now up against a new opponent.
The candidates separated by the smallest of margins, essentially tied in the polls nationally and in the key battlegrounds, including right here in Pennsylvania, all still very much in play. The ABC News presidential debate starts right now.
This is an ABC News special.
Mario just tuned in. Legion says, let's begin this travesty. Yeah, yeah.
Welcome to the shit show, brother.
I'm hoping it's just going to be entertaining. I don't expect to learn anything. Even though it's Kamala Harris's only debate, I don't expect to learn a single thing from her or about her. So I'm just hoping that it's pure entertainment. You know what I mean?
Right. What do you think the odds are she just quits? She throws her hands up.
That's what Danny's asking. Can Trump take another one out? We lost Joe Biden to a debate. We'll lose Kamala Harris tonight, and they'll move in Michelle Obama.
Months away. For Vice President Kamala Harris, this is her first debate since President Biden withdrew from the race on July 21st. Of course, that decision followed his debate against President Donald Trump in June. Since then, this race has taken on an entirely new dynamic.
And that brings us to the rules of tonight's debate. 90 minutes with 2 commercial breaks. No topics or questions have been shared with the campaigns.
Directly the result.
Directly, the absolute result.
That's what they'll be seeing. 2 minutes for rebuttals and 1 minute for follow-ups, clarifications, or responses.
Donald Trump
Their microphones will only be turned on when it's their turn to speak.
Beat somebody out of running in the debate.
Literally knocked him out of the race in a debate.
2 candidates who have never met.
President Trump won the coin toss. He chose to deliver the final closing statement of the evening. Vice President Harris selected the podium to the right.
So let's now welcome the candidates to the stage. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump.
I said it's a good move. He's doing
closing statement.
The last statement.
Yeah, very good.
Kamala Harris. Let's have a good debate.
Nice to see you. Have fun.
Thank you.
She introduced herself.
Welcome to you both. It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you both here tonight.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started.
I'm Kamala Harris.
I want to begin tonight with the issue that
Well,
voters...
she had to introduce herself. Nobody knows who she is or anything about her.
The cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending...
The beauty of this is Trump's answer to her has to be, yeah, thank you very much for putting us in this position.
Credit that we have given in a long time so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion. One of them is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand,
cosplaying as Ruth Bader Ginsburg?
Which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families.
I mean, that's easy to address. She's talking about tariffs, which tariffs aren't going to affect the cost of goods as much as the 20%. She wants to raise corporate taxes, which absolutely will destroy American consumers.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after
the same tariffs, by the way, that she's proposing, and the same tariffs that they kept in place when they took over from Donald Trump.
Billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't.
There you go.
It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class.
Yeah.
On top of that,
she
we
knows.
have millions of people pouring
facts.
into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions.
She has repeated on the campaign trail.
Yes.
They're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that she and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again, and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy.
Well, let her answer the question. Are we better off?
Talk about what Donald...
This is the problem with so-called journalists these days. They don't even push the issue.
The Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name-calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again. I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
Well, that was a good answer to a question nobody fucking asked.
To do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad. But it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic. And the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it.
Just magically
literally handed them a vaccine. We got masks. We did things that nobody thought possible.
The vaccine just magically
and people give me credit
right
for
after
rebuilding the
the
military.
election
They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounce back, and it bounced back, and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation, and by the middle
There
of
is no
next
audience,
year,
Danny. That was my soundboard.
you just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you.
Goldman Sachs approves of her message.
Then he isn't looking out for you.
Yeah, maybe she should go talk to Jamie Dimon tomorrow and just verify that.
Professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this, because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication.
Tariffs on gas.
A typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
I mean, it costs us $17,000 more per year currently under this administration.
And all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response, and you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk
every administration in the history of ever has had a trade deficit. Every single one, including this one.
To China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. "Thank you, President Xi," exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics.
Yeah, this muted
and
Mike
he
thing
taught
is
her
driving
well.
her off.
Yeah,
she's losing her mind.
She's breaking
It's killing
down.
her.
When you look at these
She's being a Karen.
millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, "I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks." But then the very next day, you reversed course.
I'm going to grab some more water, let you listen to this for a minute.
Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's an execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies.
Oh, no,
and that's
no,
not
no,
actually
no,
a surprising fact.
Okay,
Let's understand,
Alex, what you just missed is Trump was talking about Governor Northam and you will make the baby comfortable and then we'll decide what to do with them. And then the moderator
Killing the babies
said,
post-birth.
there is no state in this country, Mr. President, where it's legal to kill the baby after abortion. That's not what he said. What he said is that there are psychotic Democrats that
were trying to pass, well, they were
pushing
trying to
forth
pass that bill.
law.
Yeah, they were trying to pass that law.
And Tim Walz is one of those.
And Ralph Northam was willing to sign it.
Abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral.
That's right.
And
Name me
one
one
does
more
not
crime
have to abandon
after which,
their
after
faith
having been the victim of the
deeply
crime,
held belief
I am suddenly
to
given
agree.
license by the government to
and
commit
Donald Trump
murder
certainly should not
as a
be
result
telling
of my
woman
victim
what to do
status.
Right.
with
One other
her
crime.
Body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot?
That is
She
not a
didn't
thing
want
that's
that.
happening.
Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term? They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain
Holy shit, that's Kamala's version of death panels.
to make decisions about one's own body should not be made by the government.
Thank you.
But Kali Ma, I didn't think death panels were a real thing. I thought that was a vast right-wing conspiracy.
Right. Because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states. And the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart. And they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came
Well,
to
I
your
won't
desk?
have to because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50 and essentially 50-50.
Yeah, I mean, they had 52 years and couldn't get the vote.
She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then her, I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been, part of the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D.
Oh,
Vance,
so
has
they'll push him for a yes or no, but not her.
He said
Well,
no.
I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D. And I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think
Now,
you're
notice
speaking
while
for
Trump
me.
is
But
speaking,
I really didn't.
Kamala's shifting around and fidgeting.
Oh, she's all pissed
moving her
off.
head,
Be able to get it, just like she couldn't get
making all
student
these,
loans. They
you
couldn't
know,
get student loans.
all
They
these
didn't even
weird
get close
facial
to getting
expressions and
student
stuff.
loans. They
When
taunted
it's reversed and Trump's
people, and a lot of
microphone is
people
muted,
that had
he's
loans.
just like
They
mugshot.
can never
Yep.
get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she
Very
says
school,
about
very
going to Congress. So wonderful. Let's go to Congress, do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working one or two jobs, who can barely afford
he just a proposal I wildly disagree with, but he just announced government sponsored IVF treatments.
The health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body, and that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I have to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion?
Her mic wasn't muted there. Did you hear that?
Come on.
Okay, would you do
No,
that?
I missed it.
Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer the question? Would you
because
veto?
Under Roe v. Wade,
Answer the question. Would you veto?
You could
So
do
ABC have already flipped the script because they know that Kamala's losing.
and probably after birth. Just look
Yeah,
at
they're
the
trying
governor,
to, they're
former
trying to give her
governor.
that moment.
Yes.
The governor of Virginia said,
Yep.
we put the baby aside, and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough
You mean
new
the
asylum
Harris
restrictions.
administration?
We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us
Yeah,
to
not
stop
even a,
It was $60 billion more dollars to
into the
Ukraine.
United States.
Yes.
I know there are so
not
many
even
families
half hour
watching
in and
tonight who've
ABC
been
are already
personally
trying
affected
to
by
flip the
surge
scale.
of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve.
Well, I've been to two Donald Trump rallies, and I can tell you from firsthand experience, everything she said there was, well, bullshit.
Thousands of additional agents and officers on the board.
Patrick Brown and I were at one when flipping Vernon Jones jumped off the stage and went crowd surfing.
Right.
56-year-old big black man in Georgia, in Macon, Georgia, jumped off the stage and went crowd surfing in a freaking $1,500 tailored suit. Just, I don't give a fuck. Yeah, Trump rally is a party.
Yeah.
We're a failing nation.
A lot of fun.
And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they...
At least he can get people to go to a rally.
They want to bring our country back. They want to make
He
America...
doesn't need...
rapist.
Exactly. He doesn't need a rapist shaking her behind to get people to go to a rally.
This country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success...
Donald Trump, people will show up to see Donald Trump. Kamala Harris has to promise
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio,
AP.
and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Here they go. Live fact-checking Donald Trump. No fact-checking of Kamala Harris.
He said no credible reports.
Yeah, no
The claim
credible
was that the locals had been reporting it.
I mean, the Gateway Pundit had photographs of it.
By the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme. This is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a four-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the republic, would never survive another Trump term.
Now, didn't she begin this debate by saying you're about to hear a bunch of smears and lies come out of Donald Trump and a bunch of name-calling and falsehoods?
I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond here.
Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people. Not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people who were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book. Because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they. But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S. military.
Police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals.
Because you're an idiot is the implication.
They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country.
She didn't shake her head to that allegation.
Never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime, and it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice President Harris,
the FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud, just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big...
No, he's been found liable for defamation.
At his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York, every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context.
Well, I mean, we have a high-ranking official from the Southern District of New York on camera saying exactly what Donald Trump just said.
From any misconduct, if he were to enter the White House again, Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people.
Vice President
stop
Harris,
him.
thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a fake Russia investigation that went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault.
I guess they are in Pennsylvania. They have
says
to
you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is
Dynamite. Jump into the live chat and comment.
In diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not
that has a lot to do with her criminal and communist tendencies. Her father was a communist, and he abandoned her because communists, like Kamala Harris, are amoral, baby-murdering sociopaths. It's in their DNA.
To increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime.
3 million homes in 4 years. Is that what she's saying? 3 million new homes by the end of her first term. Obviously, a federal
math is not their strong suit.
Well, obviously, a federal takeover of housing. What she's forgetting is the regulatory schemes that are in place that will prevent that from ever happening. Her regulatory schemes that are in place to prevent that from ever happening.
People up and not beating people down and name calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your response?
First of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now.
There
you don't mind, please.
There it is.
There he
Does that sound familiar?
Gotcha, bitch.
She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to
She's making a
confiscate your
face like
guns,
she can't
and she
believe
will
what she's
never
hearing,
allow
but that's a
fracking in
quote directly
Pennsylvania.
From her.
If she
Yep.
won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out of it. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get
environment,
to.
as
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy and the role
That
of
happened, by the way.
crisis.
Peaceful
Mr.
transfer of
President, on January
power.
6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home.
Which Twitter took down.
Anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said
Which
a
Twitter
thing
took
that
down
isn't covered.
at the
Peacefully and
instruction of the
patriotically, I
FBI.
said
Yeah.
during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar. Remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, well, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world. And crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when
ask
are those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle? They went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask you.
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi, but I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been
He's telling the lie.
Of completely unrelated conditions.
Correct.
But this is not an isolated situation.
It took
Let's
the New
remember
York Times, I think
Charlottesville,
it was like 2 years to
where
correct
there
the headline
was a
on Brian's
mob of
sickness.
people
Right.
carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that
Now she's,
when it came
she's
to the
getting
Proud Boys, a
she's getting her
militia,
lies and hoaxes confused.
Yep.
the president said, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to
She
turn
just
the
braided
page.
3 completely
And if that
debunked
was a bridge
hoaxes.
too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election
And yet there
will
was,
be a bloodbath.
if I'm not mistaken, Chris,
And the outcome of
a
this
peaceful
election is not
transfer
to
of
his
power and a
liking.
swearing in of a new president.
Let's turn the page on this.
If I'm
Oh.
not mistaken.
Let's
A
chart
thing
a
that
course
totally
for
happened?
the
Yeah,
future
okay.
and not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
Has
It
anybody
was a
asked
different
her
term, and it was a term
if she will
related
commit
energy because
to
they
accepting the
destroyed
results
our
of the
energy
election?
business. That was where bloodbath was. Also,
Well, they're already putting in the, they're already laying the framework for their Russia, and Iran and China hoax that's coming up if she happens to lose.
In almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up,
Happens to
just like
lose,
they bring
when she loses.
2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this: you talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down
When
to
they go to a
Chris's
commercial, I have a
It's so
video to
ridiculous.
play.
Go down
Folks
to
that
Okay,
don't
real
watch.
quick.
and let her sign
Pit
a
Danny
bill to
says
close the
Raskin
border.
called for a civil
Because they
war.
have the
Well,
right
I'm going to
I-
have to correct you there real quick, Pit Danny.
Hold-
What he
I-
called for was a coup.
Yeah, I'm going to play that clip of
You wake him
Raskin.
up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You say, come on down to the office. Let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President.
people are killing many people,
Look at her throat.
unlike
Does she
J6.
have an
We talked
Adam's
immigration
apple, or
here
did she
tonight. I
just
do
forget
want
to
to
spit the
focus on
cock out?
this next issue for both of you because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say that.
sarcastically.
But
You know
those-
that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
No
Republican.
judge looked at it.
And said there
They
was
said
no
we didn't have
widespread fraud.
standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The president of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden.
Okay, he did not say that he did not say that. He said that he said it sarcastically.
That was a passive-aggressive, snippy little shit comment right there.
Just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences.
All right, I'm gonna cut away from this for just a second because I want to show everybody that's watching, I want to show you what the Democrats' plan for January 6th, 2025 is should Donald Trump win this election. Don't take it from me, take it from the Democrats themselves.
Because what can be put into the Constitution can slip away from you very quickly. And the greatest example going on right now before our very eyes is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which they're just disappearing with a magic wand, as if it doesn't exist, even though it could not be clearer what it's stating. And so, you know, they want to kick it to Congress. So it's going to be up to us on January 6, 2025 to tell the rampaging Trump mobs that he's disqualified. And then we need bodyguards for everybody in Civil War conditions, all because the 9 justices, not all of them, but these justices who have not many cases to look at every year, not that much work to do, a huge staff, great protection.
That's the Democrats' plan if Donald Trump wins, simply to tell him he's disqualified and then surround themselves with armed guards.
Troubling, and the American people deserve better.
The ability to execute plans of that nature, that is why the Democrat seeks to abolish the Second Amendment and confiscate your firearms.
Right.
That is the reason for it.
Why is the whole world
Alex, I'm going to step away for just a second.
Yeah, no problem.
Go ahead.
No problem. Yeah, you talk about a threat to democracy. Not that we are democracy. You talk about a threat to democracy. Jamie Raskin just spelled out right there the threat to democracy.
Right. He just straight up said if Donald Trump wins this election, then we will abolish democracy.
Yeah, there will be no peaceful transfer of power. They will simply oust Donald Trump.
The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president. But when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
your time is
I think we're going to do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization,
Oh, she's changed her tune all of a sudden.
Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
A two-state solution is impossible and will ultimately end with the eradication of the Jews.
She just lost the election.
Yeah.
And prevent the killing of more
Yeah.
innocent civilians.
Yeah, she just, well, as Crackshot just said, she just fractured her base.
Yeah.
Picking Tim Walz doesn't really matter now.
No threat of it either, by the way, for 4
Yeah,
years.
she just completely
have gone
threw
into
away
Ukraine
all the
and
gains
killed
that she made
millions of people
by
when you add it up.
throwing away
Far worse
Shapiro
than
for
people
being a
understand
Jew,
what's going on over
by
there.
refusing to say that she's
when she
going to gas
mentions
them.
about-
Yeah,
Basically.
I mean, she should have just, she should just be honest about it and admit that she hates the Jews, she loves the terrorists, because that's what their policies have. If you look at their policies, that's exactly what they show.
She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel. Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation. And now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
I kind of believe that.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that.
Okay.
He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that
she's just
Donald
digging her
Trump
grave
is
even
weak
deeper
and
now.
wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear. They
That's not
can
what Putin
manipulate you
Yeah,
with
not what Putin
flattery
said.
and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why
All the
we
claims she's making
understand
right
that
now
we have to have a president
are based on the presupposition that everyone who hears any claim ever must accept the claim as being literally true.
Yes.
And sarcasm does not exist.
Yeah.
Hyperbole does not exist in the lexicon anywhere. And so, given that, then we must, if what she says is true, then we must accept Putin's endorsement as full throated and direct and good and literal and legitimate.
Well, she's also referring to claims that have been made by the daughter of the cleaner of the, the daughter of the housekeeper of so and so. These are claims that are three, four, five times removed from the actual source.
I'm sixth generation. Don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
and approved the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe, because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center.
All right, so they're going to commercial break. Look, I got to be fair here. I think she's holding her own. She's not doing well. She's coming across to me. Maybe this is the misogynist in me.
Well,
she's
she
coming
hasn't shit
across as a
herself yet.
little bit unhinged at times, but she's faring so far better than I thought she would. I don't think she's floundering as badly as I expected. She's certainly not answering questions that matter. She has a lot to say about the issues that people just don't give a shit about anymore, like January 6th. And the simple rebuttal to that for Trump, and he should have mentioned it, is the fact that on January 6th of 2025, the Democrats have already pledged to oust him, to commit a coup and simply not certify the election and deny him the office. That's their plan. That didn't happen under Donald Trump.
And that plan has been stated explicitly.
Yeah, that didn't happen
Larry
under
Neville
Trump.
asks, has she changed our minds yet? And no, she hasn't. Larry.
not even remotely close to it. Although
now,
she's not doing as bad as I expected.
I'll be fair. Okay, Kamala's not doing a great job.
She's flustering him a bit, though.
But if I'm being reasonable, I was kind of expecting her to get BTFO'd a little bit harder by now. Now, before they started cutting both mics on, hoping they could manufacture her "I'm speaking" moment that Trump totally stole from her.
Yes,
he shut that shit down expertly. I was hoping he'd do that. I'm so glad he did.
Yeah,
it was brilliant. But before I give any further criticism of Kamala, I'll be perfectly fair. It is my opinion that no woman should ever be the president. That is not a job for a woman. The commander-in-chief of the United States Armed Forces must never be a job done by a woman. They are not suited to the task. A person who disagrees with that must begin by making the argument that men and women are interchangeable, and that simply is not the fact.
You're just referring to the U.S., though. You're not referring, because you're not saying that Margaret Thatcher was not equipped. Okay, good. Love me some Maggie. But you're right. It's a completely different ballgame. The Prime Minister of England, of the UK, is a completely different ballgame to President of the United States, leader of the free world.
Yeah. And yeah, I've talked about it on my show many times. We have women in the military in the United States. We have women in the armed forces. Mm-hmm. That includes my wife, and she knows where I stand on that. That's how we met. But personally, I have never been happy with women in the military in the current iteration. I would go so far as to say that there's room for women to do certain administrative work in the Army, which is basically what my wife does. But the fact of the matter is, as far as being a soldier, the argument was always equal work for equal pay. A woman can do it just as well as a man can do. Okay, fine. Why are there different PT standards?
Right.
Why do I have to do 50 push-ups when she only has to do 25 and we get paid the same?
Yeah.
Why do I have to get shot at? Why do I have to trade bullets with the enemy and she doesn't? Right? And equal work for equal pay for equal work? No. If you want equal pay, you must be capable of doing equal work. If you can't run 2 miles in 15 minutes or less, you don't belong in the fucking Army.
That's a fair point. You could also say, though, that anyone that has never served should never be commander-in-chief of the
I agree with
U.S.
that.
Armed
I'd be
Forces.
totally comfortable with
and
that.
that would include Donald Trump at this point.
Now, in fairness, if that were the case, he wouldn't have run to begin with.
Yeah.
But we also would not have had Joe Biden, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, I mean, we'd be in much better shape. Well, we wouldn't have had Reagan, but we also wouldn't have had Carter, or we wouldn't have had Johnson. In fact, if the rule were there that you had to serve in the military in order to be the commander in chief, we would not have an IRS in this country.
Very true.
Or federal income tax.
Presidential debate tonight. We're going to continue here, and I want to turn to the war in Ukraine. We're now 2.5 years into this conflict. Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy.
Yeah, W was a reservist.
To do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up.
It did, Steve. I saw it the first time and brought it up on screen the first time. I just showed it again, that's all.
Yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also, as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump...
Many of which have made their way to places like Syria and Gaza.
And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO.
They're thankful he's not president because they're not held accountable under this administration.
Because there's nobody there to make the bills anymore.
Exactly.
Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of...
why don't you tell the hundreds of thousands of Jewish Americans right here in America how quickly you gave up on them?
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and please, I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening. But he does have that, something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate as soon as they left. Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is Commander-in-Chief,
struggling to squeeze
and
all
the
her
American
talking
people
points into individual
have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up.
If that's the role and responsibility, why is this war still going on 2 years later? Or what is it, 3 years now? Why is it, if that's the responsibility, and she's been in charge for the last 4 years, why is it still going on? Have you not lived up to your responsibility, sweetheart?
He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen, he's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you. Otherwise, we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President.
Only a year later, or 2 years later,
any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are.
Really?
Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 terrorists, Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not, again, appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, you know, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, it was we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal, and in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris.
Thank you, Master. May I have another?
She did not like that one bit.
When she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity?
I want to ask a bigger question. Why are you a racist?
I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm asking.
I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out.
He showed up to a hostile environment, right? It was the National Association of Black Journalists.
Yeah.
An environment where the black girl refused to actually show up. And you know what? He said what literally everyone is thinking.
You know, why are you black when it's convenient?
Right.
Over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started.
He clearly got the questions ahead of time.
Yeah.
And I mean, they colluded to plan a specific strategy.
These are prepared responses.
Yeah.
Because
And for Democrats to be talking about dividing people is that's rich.
The same individual
It really is.
who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young Black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5, took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first Black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this, want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people?
No, you
Knowing
don't.
that
Your voters don't
regardless
use words
of
like
people's
discourse.
color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your 3rd time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park 5, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time is up,
I
Lindsay.
want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country, one who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction, to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life, to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David,
on home
that
mortgages
people really
increased
want tonight,
by 1,000% on her
that is
watch.
constantly about belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's
Trump,
turn back
we
to
have
policy.
to move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy,
She has
please.
a plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move on to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay. Thank you,
That's
Mr.
what her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond
President
because
Trump,
the
President
former
Trump,
president has said
no, I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry. We're
I just
going
need
to move
respond
on, Vice
one
President
time
Harris.
to what he has
President
said
Trump, this is
multiple
now
times.
your
Yes.
3rd time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Correct. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it, and we're going to replace it. But remember this. I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones, too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not-too-distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government.
That was not a good answer.
2 years later, you proposed
It wasn't.
Especially saying I'm not president yet. Well, neither is she. And he just gave her an out for every policy. But it's also not a good answer when just last week he announced his own socialized medicine plan, which is government-funded IVF treatments for anybody that wants them, which are remarkably expensive.
Yeah, and as much as I'm a big fan, I mean, don't get me wrong, big fan.
Yeah.
I don't like the IVF position.
Yeah.
Just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours.
That's right. You were a senator at the time.
It was up for a vote in the United States Senate.
Still have this piece
and
of
the
shit.
late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said, at the time because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president, and we, over the last 4 years, have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it.
Vice President Harris,
in terms of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a lot of...
She made a mistake. Number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get. People are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs. While I have been
who attend public schools are, like many of the other cults of the left, bought in on the notion of climate change.
Well, they're indoctrinated into that notion.
Every year for my entire life and for decades prior that the world will end because the climate is changing, either the global cooling, global warming, and then finally
the ice caps were,
you know what, it's just climate change.
Yeah, the ice caps were supposed to have melted 20 years ago.
In 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, and then it doesn't.
Yeah.
Not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. They're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people.
China.
What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate.
That segment did not go well for Donald Trump or Republicans. Those were some issues that Republicans shouldn't be talking about, especially health care. Republicans have been a disaster on health care. And I'm not saying that's because I support Obamacare. It isn't.
Right.
It's because Republicans have screwed themselves and backed themselves into a corner on health care. Instead of just saying, no, it needs to be an open free market system, they spent 8 years talking about repeal and replace, failed dramatically. Donald Trump comes into office 8 years later after, repeal and replace finally died its rightful death. Donald Trump comes into office 8 years later and fucking reincarnates it and sets himself up for failure yet again. Now he's talking about health care from what I consider remarkably socialist position, considering he's the guy who only last week rolled out his own socialized medicine healthcare plan on a whim It's not actually a plan. It was just a whim. It was a way to deal with the political winds changing by saying, "Oh yeah, we're either going to fund IVF treatments for everybody that wants them. In other words, we the taxpayers are going to fund it, or we're going to mandate that insurance companies cover it, which is simply going to drive up costs for everybody else."
Right. Now, and to be clear, like on the IVF thing, I'm not super. I don't have any particular opposition to IVF, but. Well, I mean, I don't have any particular opposition to IVF, but to be very clear, I am absolutely not on board for funding it with taxpayer dollars. So if this was ever in doubt for anybody, if the question is how much tax money should we spend on a thing, my answer is don't do the fucking thing.
Right.
Right. If your roads aren't good enough, that's because you need a Domino's nearby, not more government. There is nothing that government can do that private industry cannot do better and cheaper.
Right.
What Alex just said about health insurance plans covering IVF. If the government doesn't pay for it, make the health insurance plans cover it, right? It's one thing, it is one thing to say that some health insurance plans would be wise to offer coverage for IVF in the same way that during World War II, when the government said you're not allowed to raise wages, companies in desperate need of attracting good talent who couldn't pay more in order to compete with the other guys trying to hire talent, created private retirement plans. And those were so very wonderfully successful and valuable that the government stepped in and created the Social Security system to murder
them,
the retirement business.
Yep.
And that is the sole reason that the Social Security system exists.
Well, and now they want to
take private business from you.
She wants to kill 401ks by slapping a tax on unrealized capital gains. I'm going to say something.
She wants my house.
I'm going to share a statistic with people. If you want to bring down the cost of healthcare, there's one thing that's remarkably simple that you could do. I don't necessarily agree with it, but it's remarkably simple.
Quit eating anything but meat.
Well, all you have to do is ban drug advertising. And this is backed, that may sound simplistic, but this is backed by data. There are no longer, I think New Zealand has actually outlawed it at this point, but there were 2 countries in the entire world that allow pharmaceutical advertising. Coincidentally, the 2 countries with the highest healthcare costs on the planet. It was the United States and New Zealand. I believe New Zealand have now since outlawed it. And I had this conversation with Danny the other day. I said, I'm going to do some more research now into the cost of their healthcare and see if this theory played out and see if the cost of their healthcare has dropped dramatically, which I believe it probably has.
And of course, we were paying for those healthcare costs in New Zealand because, like every other country, we're subsidizing the existence of their socialist state.
Right.
And if you have socialism in your country, that's an American is paying for that.
Yeah, well, thanks to our covering your national defense.
Yep.
But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors. By the way,
that is language. That is also language she's stealing from Trump. He had the opportunity zones.
Well, she wants.
She has never had an original.
They want to create an opportunity economy, but then turn around and look what Democrats are trying to do to companies like Uber and Lyft and DoorDash. Right. Yeah, they're big fans of an opportunity economy.
Military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves...
Yeah, somebody who's weak enough not to ask the questions that need to be asked.
And focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it, and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like, we're not going to frack. We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah. I don't know how many people would have been watching that last segment, but that honestly did not go well for Donald Trump. And he missed so many opportunities when they start. And Republicans need to, conservative Republicans at least, need to... They need to get their talking points right. I've said this already. The reason Democrats win on abortion is because of messaging. It's not because they're right. We know they're not right. We know they are wholly immoral in this issue, but it's purely messaging. And Republicans don't have messaging on these issues. They don't have messaging on abortion. They don't have messaging on healthcare. They don't have decent messaging on the environment. And those were all issues that they dealt with there.
They know that they can count on women on the abortion issue. They know that they can count on women to think entirely with their ovaries, entirely with their estrogen and their emotions.
Yeah, when Democrats start asking you about health care, turn the conversation to child mutilation. Turn the conversation there. It's an issue. Obamacare isn't even, I think this is what Legion was saying. They're arguing over minutia. The audience doesn't care. Yeah, nobody right now gives a shit about Obamacare. It's a done deal. We're stuck with it. Republicans screwed that pooch already. What Americans do care about is the mutilation, the genital mutilation of children, which is a healthcare issue. And when you start getting questions about healthcare, turn the issue to that. Put it back. Put the onus back on your opponents. the ones that support the government coming in, stealing kids from their families and allowing them to be mutilated for simply because they have a mental health disorder. That's what people care about right now. That's an issue that matters. That's an election issue. And Donald Trump, he just missed that opportunity completely. And yeah, I hate to say it, but she did a lot better than I expected her to do. She was remarkably well prepared. Now, that comes down to one of two things. Either they prepared her for every potential question, which would be an awful lot of data and statistics to have to remember, or they knew what the questions were. And we're going to have
what happened is Kamala's team wrote a script and handed it to the moderators.
Yeah.
People keep talking about, are they going to give Kamala the questions ahead of time? That's not how it works. Kamala's team wrote the questions. And handed them to the moderators.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's how it worked the last time. It was, who was the chair of the DNC at the time? What was her name?
Schultz?
No, it was before her. Gosh, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's not important at this time. But she did a new legacy media interview and blew the entire script by letting it slip that, oh yeah, we provided the debate questions up front to these people.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
The black chick.
Yes. Yep.
With the big hair.
Yes. She worked in the Clinton administration. What was her name? Donna Brazile. Thank you. Donna Brazile.
That's it.
So whether that happened again, I don't know. I'm not alleging it did. Kamala Harris may have just been remarkably well prepared. And for the dumbass that she's portrayed herself to be up until now, it shocked me how well prepared she actually was. Because she is, I mean, quite frankly, she is not that capable. Listen to her answer any other question at any other time, and it is a bumbling mess.
Yeah, I'll give her credit where it's due. She managed to get through it without doing the cackle.
Yeah.
But she was struggling to keep that laugh under control.
Yes.
And the whole time when the mic was muted, she was just kind of shifting back and forth, dancing on her feet, and making all these unschooled, undisciplined facial expressions. Where Donald Trump just like, okay, mic's off, mugshot.
Yeah. I mean, Legion's right. It was very rhetoric heavy. I'm not saying that what she said was true. What I'm saying is she didn't come across as the bumbling fool that she normally comes across as. And unfortunately tonight, with the number of eyeballs that are going to be on this, that may play in her favor. That may play in her favor. I think Trump, especially in the last segment, I think Trump missed a lot of opportunities to score points, especially his closing statement. That was entirely unprepared. And he came across, quite frankly, as the bumbling fool there with his closing statement. That was just a waste. You effectively win the coin flip. You choose to have the last say, and you just waste it. He just threw it away. I think he threw it away because she got to him.
Maybe, but I stand by what I said earlier. This was hers to lose, and neither of them moved the needle.
Oh yeah,
so
no one's changing their minds.
The most generous take I can offer Harris is she bit it not quite as hard as I expected her to.
She did better than
still a weak performance.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. A bunch of lies.
She blathered out a whole bunch of absolute falsehoods.
Yep.
They're going to be fact checked up and down.
They will
and
be
one of the things that's going to be repeated.
They will be fact checked true, by the way. No matter how many lies she spewed, the complicit media is going to say, "Oh yeah, that was true."
Yeah, guaranteed. Tomorrow you'll have Steven Crowder showing, "Oh, these are all the things that Kamala said that were true, and Snopes saying all these things. No, these were all actually true. Here's the evidence we just invented.
Right.
But quite simply, neither of them moved the needle.
Yeah, and like I said, going into this, I don't think they're going to be changing anyone's minds. And like I said, yeah, I'm not saying that anything she said resonated with me. I'm not saying that anything she said was true, because holy shit, there were a lot of lies coming out of her mouth there tonight. But she did way better than I expected. And I think that is going to resonate with people. It's not going to change any minds, I don't believe. But I think it's going to invigorate her base, who have been remarkably depressed lately looking at the polling numbers. I don't expect this to move any polling numbers. Let's see what JD is talking about real quick.
Legislation that's never going to actually happen, and why he would veto it or not veto it when he says very explicitly that he doesn't support a national abortion ban and he wants these policies to be made by the states. But I think there's a deeper and more important issue here in this debate, which is that you had Kamala Harris effectively echoing platitude after platitude after platitude. The American people can't pay their grocery bills on platitudes. They can't put their kids in a house on platitudes. And Kamala Harris had a lot to say, but very little actual substance behind it for how she's going to lower grocery prices, secure the border, and make housing more affordable in this country. She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She can't run on her record, and she apparently can't run on much of her plans either, because it's just a lot of slogans and not a whole lot of substance.
But Senator Vance, why won't he just say that he would veto the national abortion ban? And by the way, had you spoken to him about it before you were put in a position to answer that question?
No, I hadn't spoken to him about it because, again, Donald Trump thinks the question is absurd because he doesn't support a national abortion ban, and he's been explicit about it. And, John, I think that it's so preposterous for the media to focus so much on an issue where Donald Trump has been crystal clear, and not on the fact that people can't afford groceries and housing because of Kamala Harris's policies. This election is actually quite simple.
Because they want him to say, they want him to answer it, right? They want him to say either no or yes, I'll veto it, or no, I won't. He knows that that's what they want, and that's why he specifically won't give it to them, because he knows it drives them insane.
And a lot of their kids are dying of fentanyl overdoses because Kamala Harris has let the Mexican drug cartels take over the southern border. This is a disgrace, what's going on in our country, John, and we could do so much better if we just had better leadership. We've got the best workers, the most beautiful country, the best natural resources, but Kamala Harris's leadership is squandering the great benefits of this country. It's why we've got to get back to Donald Trump's leadership.
Senator, by the way, I asked because he hadn't been crystal clear, and he said something different than what you said. That's why I was seeking clarification. But let me ask you about this, just very quickly. I heard Donald Trump before this debate describe Kamala Harris as, I'll just read a few of them, a low IQ individual, somebody who doesn't have the mental capacity to be president, really dumb, unable to put two sentences together. Is that what you saw on the stage tonight?
Yeah.
John, what I saw was a lot of slogans. I think the American people are smart, and Kamala Harris talks to them like they're children. She repeats these ridiculous platitudes where if you actually think about what she said, you realize that it doesn't make any sense. She talks a lot about her plans, but then her plans, when you analyze the substance, don't make any sense. And more importantly, John, the American people don't get fed on plans. She has been the vice president for 3.5 years. What she can't do, refuses to do, and has no ability to do is to say, I accomplished lower prices because she didn't, or I accomplished lower housing prices because she didn't, or I secured the southern border because she didn't do that. She has failed as vice president, and the fundamental question is, do we want to give her a promotion? I think the answer has to be no, John.
All right, Senator Vance, thank you for joining us. Mary.
One thing both sides can agree on, this was a...
Yeah, he is spot on there. Yeah, she was very rhetoric heavy, but unfortunately that's going to work for her. It wouldn't work for Trump. It wouldn't work for any Republican. And I don't, you know, that last segment, it's not Donald Trump's fault. That last segment is the fault of the Republican Party as a whole for having absolutely no cohesive plan or messaging on those particular issues. That's the problem. He's running for a party that has completely dropped the ball on those issues. What is the guy going to do? reinvent policy on the fly?
The facts are these: the Democrat Party is evil. It is the party of communism, of breadlines, of infanticide, of child mutilation. The Democrat Party is just plain vile. The Democrat Party, when a soldier raises his hand and says, "I swear to uphold and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic," that's domestic DNC, right? But unfortunately, the Republican Party is a weak champion of the Constitution, of American liberty and prosperity and freedom. The Republican Party is not just an insufficient party. They are, in many cases, so weak that they're counterproductive. Those of us who are interested in and dedicated to liberty, prosperity, and the constitutional state of America, the representative republic that we were founded to be, are ill represented within our government. We are, in fact, the victims of modern taxation without representation, plain and simple. And at the end of the day, neither of them moved the needle because, one, we are entrenched. Mitt Romney was right. There's 47% of Americans out there that don't pay taxes. They get a welfare check, and they're always going to vote Democrat no matter what.
Right.
And in this election, a large number of those people are going to vote Democrat. She's a woman, and she's a colored woman. Ergo, she is the correct choice because of history, her story. And they don't have an intelligent reason to vote for her other than their psychotic dedication to her immutable characteristic. By making a choice that is sexist and racist, I am able to prove that I am not sexist or racist. It is the logic there, right? It is entirely a party of pathos and sycophancy.
Yeah.
So that is why the needle didn't move tonight.
Yeah. And Danny says that I'm right, we need better messaging. And and this is the thing, and you gotta, I have to respect this about Donald Trump. What he didn't do there was stand there and lie about what he's going to get done. He knows full well there's absolutely nothing, because of the current state of the Republican Party, there's absolutely nothing he can do on those policy issues. There's no plan in place. There's not even messaging behind it. But what he did not do is what Kamala Harris did all night, which is simply lie and say, no, I'll do this and I'll get this done. The only things he actually promises to do are the things he knows he can get done. I don't know if anyone else has noticed that, but that's been Donald Trump's and a number of things that he got done that he never should have got done, like bump stocks. But whatever. I imagine he'll even get his IVF treatment plan passed, as much as I dislike it. Yeah,
I'm not a fan of the IVF thing. Like I don't particularly care about IVF generally. I'm not saying that we should outlaw it, but
no, neither am I. I think
just
IVF
like the rest
treatments
of your healthcare badasses.
Yeah.
I shouldn't pay for it.
Yeah, I shouldn't be paying for your plastic surgery. I shouldn't be paying for your IVF treatments. And all it's going to do is drive up the cost for everybody. And I'll tell you why. I use this as an example. I'm a single man with no wife, no kids, right? My medical insurance has to cover birth control.
Yep.
And maternity benefits. I'm paying for those. I will never have to use those in my life, but I pay for those.
No, correction.
I will also have to pay.
Able to use those in your life.
Sure.
You're paying for something that you don't have the option to use.
Correct. But my plan has to cover them because of a mandate. Well, that's what Donald Trump just proposed with IVF treatments. Either the government pays for it outright, or they mandate that medical insurance companies have to cover them, which means my costs go up because of that. This is why I am opposed to that. It just simply doesn't make any sense in a open, fair, free market. But hey, it is what it is.
I mean, it makes as much sense as us being required to under our health insurance plans, us being required to keep a kit of peg legs and hooks on hand just in case.
Just in case, exactly. But whatever. Again, it's not his fault. It's not his fault. That's a failing of the Republican Party after decades of mismanagement of that entire issue, just like they've mismanaged the abortion issue. And maybe Donald Trump will be able to go into office and change something. But, he doesn't have a plan because the Republicans have no plan. That's why.
Right.
And it was very nice of ABC to sit there and point it out. Well, so 10 years later, you have no plan. Yeah, no, he doesn't. You're absolutely right. Maybe now point out that Kamala Harris, until today, had absolutely no policy plans whatsoever. And the ones the ones that she does have were stolen directly from Trump and from Joe Biden. Maybe
literally copy pasted from his campaign website. And I don't understand why there's not more, why the Trump campaign and the Republicans generally aren't making a bigger deal out of the fact that she's using Biden's FEC number.
Right.
That is a major crime. That is a financial fraud crime worth millions, if not $1 billion.
How do you figure?
Because she's illegally using his campaign contributions.
Correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding was because she was on the ticket that it was the only place the money could go.
No, she's the only one that could get away with using his FEC number, but she is not on the ticket. She was not on that ticket. A candidate named Vice President Kamala Harris was on a ticket to be the vice president, but there was no candidate on that ticket named Kamala Harris.
Yeah. Well, I did say when that came up, I did say at the time the best thing the Republicans could be doing is filing their lawsuits right now and getting ahead of it. And I don't know if they did because that may have thrown a wrench into the works and prevented some of that money going to her. A judge probably would have issued an injunction until it was decided. But as far as I know, Republicans didn't do that.
Let me explain it like this real quick. When you first run for a national office, right, you get an FEC number. It is similar to having a Social Security number. So you get an FEC number for you, and that tracks your campaign finances and donor funds, contributions, etc. Everything to do with you campaigning for national office. You get it the first time you campaign for national office, and it follows you as you campaign for any other national office. So the Donald Trump's FEC number was the same for his first campaign and for 2020 and for this one.
Okay.
Joe Biden has had the same FEC number for half a damn century. Kamala Harris got her first FEC number when she first ran for Congress, right? And what she's doing now, using Biden's FEC number, is akin to you hiring me, and I put my wife's
Social Security number
on the 1040
I see what you're getting at, and it that's great, but it's meaningless unless somebody actually challenges it. And
right.
That's what
it's only meaninless because we have a House full of
what the GOP
spineless Republicans that aren't pursuing the law.
Failed to challenge it, but that makes sense. What you're saying.
Yeah, we can solve a lot of problems if we just enforce the law. For example,
right,
killing a human being with malice aforethought is murder.
Right.
We don't need a national abortion ban. Premeditated murder is already a crime.
Yes, already a crime.
As is the conspiracy to commit it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's likely the only debate we're going to see between these two. She's dodging any other plans. She already dodged one, the Fox debate that turned into a town hall. She successfully dodged that one without any media scrutiny, because Fox News aren't going to provide her the questions up front. Let's put it that way.
Right.
So that's not likely to happen. So she has 50.
And I did think it was, I did find it very telling. Now, she lost that debate. We knew that to be the case when ABC decided to start leaving her mic on. That was the moment that it was clear that, okay,
she's losing.
The people at ABC, they understand now that she is on the back foot.
Yes.
There's nowhere for her to go. She needs she needs help.
Yes.
She needs her I'm speaking moment.
Yeah.
And then the Donald just took that away from her. That right there is going to be meme magic for a decade.
It is, I think, for us. Here's my issue, and I look at it. I look at this in I guess a more pragmatic way. The legacy media are still remarkably powerful in this country, and the legacy media in that last segment, were given everything they need to run a campaign against Donald Trump, and pollute the minds of Americans. And it's a shame, because I know that's what's going to happen. Yeah. He did well initially, right? I think the first 2/3, I think he held his own and won, and which means he won the debate. That last third, though, that's all the Marxist media need. And we'll see what happens. Yep. We'll keep an eye on the polling. She has 50-something days left to avoid answering any other questions. We'll never actually get a policy question answered by this woman. I plan to make housing more affordable. How? I plan to bring back down the cost of food. How? Well, I'm going to cap prices.
Oh, yeah. Hey, credit where it's due. If I'm on the basketball court looking across and we're picking teams, Kamala is coming to play dodgeball with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's very good at it. Very good at it. All right, brother, let's wrap this up. I appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much. Folks, you can find Chris, the Brushfire Mind, on all of the channels. The Brushfire Mind, weekday mornings, 7:30. Go check them out. And for those who are watching on Chris's channel, this is TPS Report. We are on Rumble and X. We're banned from YouTube. We walked away from Facebook intentionally, and we're sticking for right now. We're on the channels that at least pay lip service to free speech. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah,
we've been thrown off YouTube a few times, but I keep winning my appeals.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. We appreciate everybody tuning in, and hopefully you'll come back. Danny and I, Danielle is my partner in this venture. She wasn't able to make it tonight, but we're here Mondays and Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern. Hopefully some of you will come back. And of course, our friends that are here with us all of the time. We love you and we appreciate you being here. Chris, appreciate it, brother. Thanks a lot.
We love you, and we will see you tomorrow.
Thank you. Bye, guys. See ya.
Good night, guys.